Now we are at the book of the Tens, Anguttara Nikaya, Sutta number 46. Once the Exalted One was staying among the Sakyans at Kapilavatu in Banyan Park. At that time, a number of Sakyan lay followers, that day being the Uposatha, came to visit the Exalted One, and on coming to him, saluted him and sat down at one side. So seated, the Exalted One said this to those Sakyan lay followers. Sakyans, are you keeping the Uposatha with the 8 precepts? I stop here for a moment to make some comments. This Uposatha, they translate as the Sabbath, the day when the lay people are supposed to keep the 8 precepts. And this was a tradition in India even before the Buddha's time. That is why the Buddha asked his lay disciples to follow. And this tradition of keeping the Uposatha, it's on the 8th day of the lunar calendar, the 15th, the 23rd, and the 30th or 29th, which means approximately once a week. And from there, you can see other religions like the Christians, they also keep the Sabbath, but for the Christians it's the Sunday. And for the Buddhists, they keep the 8 precepts. The 8 precepts, the first precept is not to kill, the second is not to take what is not given, the third is not to engage in sexual conduct, the fourth is not to lie, the fifth is not to take intoxicants, the sixth is not to eat after noon, the period between noon and the next morning dawn. The 7th precept is not to adorn the body and also not to watch shows, not to enjoy music, etc. And the 8th precept is not to sleep on high and wide or luxurious beds. These are the 8 precepts. Now to continue with the sutta, so the Sakyans replied, "Sometimes, sir, we do so, but maybe sometimes we don't." And the Buddha said, "Well, Sakyans, in those matters, it is no gain to you. It is ill-gotten by you, since in a life thus conjoined to fear of grief, in a life thus conjoined to fear of death, you sometimes do and sometimes maybe do not keep the Uposatha with the 8 precepts. What think you, Sakyans? Suppose a man here, without meeting an unlucky day, were to earn half a kahapana in some business or other. Might not folk well say of him, a clever fellow, full of energy?" Stop here for a moment to comment. This kahapana is a measure of money used in the Buddha's days. Then they replied, "Yes, sir, they might." And the Buddha said, "What think you, Sakyans? Suppose a man here, without meeting an unlucky day, were to earn a kahapana, or 2 or more, up to 50 kahapanas in some business or other. Might not folk well say of him, a clever fellow, full of energy?" "Yes, sir, they might." Now what do you think, Sakyans? Suppose that man, day by day, earning 100 or 1,000 kahapanas, and hoarding up what he got, were to reach 100 years, were to live 100 years, would not he amass great wealth? "He would, sir." "Well, Sakyans, what think you? Would that man, because of his wealth, on account of his wealth, in consequence of his wealth, would that man, for a single night or a single day, or even half a night or half a day, live in the enjoyment of utter happiness?" "Surely not, sir." "And why not?" "Because, sir, sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, of the nature of deception. I stop here for a moment. Here, utter happiness seems to refer to the heavenly happiness or the bliss of jhana, meditative absorption. And in other suttas, the Buddha has said that but maybe here it refers more to sensual pleasures, because here it is said that sensual pleasures are impermanent, hollow, false, of the nature of deception. And in some other suttas, the Buddha has said that sensual pleasures can be likened to a bone without any meat thrown to a hungry dog. When the dog is very hungry and you throw a piece of bone, a big piece of bone, you will bite at the bone, gnaw at the bone, but the hunger cannot be satisfied. So it is the same with sensual pleasures. It just gives us a fleeting happiness, but it is very impermanent, and so that is why it is said that it is hollow and false, of the nature of deception. Now the Buddha said, "Now Sakyans, suppose here a follower of mine, living serious, ardent and resolved, were to live faring onward as I have advised for 10 years. He would spend 100 years, 100 times 100 years, 100 times 1,000 years, 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness, and he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or a winner of surety, a stream winner." Let's stop here for a moment. In the heavens, the lifespan is in terms of millions of years. That's why here the Buddha said, such a long time this person can enjoy. A once-returner is a Sakadagamin, is a person who has attained the second fruit of Aryahood. And a non-returner is an Anagami, the third fruit of Aryahood. And a stream winner is a Sotapanna, the first fruit Arya. Then the Buddha continued, "Let alone 10 years, Sakyans. Suppose here a follower of mine were to live faring onwards as I have advised for 9, 8, 7, 6, or even for a single year. He would live 100 years, up to 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness. And he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or at any rate a stream winner. Let alone a single year, Sakyans. Suppose here a follower of mine, living serious, ardent and resolved, were to live faring onward as I have advised, for 10 months, for 9, 8, up to a single month, or even half a month, even 10 days and nights, for 7, 6, 5. Even if he were to live this for a single night and day, he would spend 100 years, 100 times 100 years, 100 times 1,000 years, 100 times 100,000 years, enjoying utter happiness, and he would be a once-returner, or a non-returner, or a winner of surety, a stream winner. In these matters, Sakyans, it is no gain to you, it is ill-gotten by you, since in a life thus conjoined to fear of grief, in a life thus conjoined to fear of death, you sometimes do and sometimes do not keep the Uposatha with the 8 precepts." Then they said, "Then sir, from this day forth, we here will observe the Uposatha with the 8 precepts." So you see, the Buddha is saying that if you keep the 8 precepts constantly on the Uposatha days, that means approximately once a week, then the merit is very great. That will lead you to a rebirth in heaven. And life is very uncertain. We don't know when we are going to pass away. Just recently, about a week ago, a former kapya of mine, Peng Lim, just 49 years old, passed away. Those of you who have been following me for the last 10 years or so would know him. So you see, he's even younger than me. I don't expect him to pass away and suddenly he just passed away. So life is so uncertain. We don't know when we're going to pass away. So we should always be prepared, as the Scout motto says. Sutta number 47. Once the Exalted One was staying near Vesali in great wood, at the house of the peak roof. Then Mahali, the Lichavite, came to see the Exalted One and said this to him: Sir, what is the reason, what is the cause of doing an evil deed, of committing an evil deed? And the Buddha said, Greed, Mahali, is the reason. Greed is the cause of doing an evil deed, of committing an evil deed. Hatred, Mahali, is the reason and cause. Delusion is the reason and cause. Not having thorough consideration. Wrongly directed thought. These are the reasons, these are the causes of doing an evil deed, of committing an evil deed. I just stop here for a moment to comment. These 5 things, 5 causes of doing evil. The first one is greed. Pali word is lobha. The second is hatred, dosa. The third is delusion, moha. The fourth is not having thorough consideration, ayoniso manasikara. That means not having the ability to consider properly. The fifth one is wrongly directed thought, miccha panihitang. Wrongly directed thought. These are the causes. And then they ask, Sir, what is the reason, what is the cause of doing a good deed, of committing a lovely deed? And the Buddha replied, Non-greed, Mahali, is the reason. Non-greed is the cause. Non-hatred, non-delusion, thorough consideration, rightly directed thought, Mahali, is the reason, the cause of doing a good deed, of committing a lovely deed. These are the reasons and the causes of it. Moreover, Mahali, if these 10 dharmas or qualities were not found existing in the world, there would be here no proclaiming of wrong living and crooked living, or of right living and straight living. But since, Mahali, these 10 qualities are found existing in the world, therefore is there proclaiming of wrong and crooked living, of right and straight living. That's the end of the sutta. Here these 10 qualities probably refers to these 5 causes of doing an evil deed and the 5 causes of doing a good deed. That means greed, hatred, delusion, not having thorough consideration, wrongly directed thought. And then the converse, the other 5 is non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, having thorough consideration, rightly directed thoughts. So 5 plus 5 is these 10 dharmas. The first 5 contributes to wrong living, and then the second 5 contributes to right living. So greed, you all understand what it is. Hatred also. Delusion is not understanding the nature of things, not being able to see clearly, because most of us are enveloped by the 5 hindrances that cover us and do not enable us to see things as they really are. And then thorough consideration, yoniso manasikara, means able to contemplate a problem up to the source of it, up to the root of the problem. So not having thorough consideration is not having the ability to consider a problem thoroughly. Wrongly directed thought is the thought that is directed in wrong ways. For example, having sensual desire in the thoughts, or hatred, not hatred, malice, and then hingsa, harmfulness, the wrong thoughts. So the next sutta, number 48, the Buddha said, Monks, These 10 conditions must again and again be contemplated by one who has gone forth from the home life. What 10? He must again and again contemplate these facts. 1. I am now come to a state of being an outcast. Number 2. My very life is dependent on others. Number 3. I must now conduct myself differently. Number 4. Do I reproach myself as to my virtues? Number 5. Would my wise companions in the holy life, after examining me, find me reproachable as to my virtues? Number 6. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Number 7. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I shall be the heir. Number 8. How do I spend my days and nights that are relentlessly passing by? Number 9. Do I take delight in a secluded dwelling? Number 10. Have I any supernormal attainment, any Aryan vision and knowledge, whereby, when questioned by my companions in the holy life, I shall not be confounded? These monks are the 10 conditions to be again and again contemplated by one who has gone forth from the home life. That's the end of the sutta. This sutta is principally for monks, and these are very important contemplations a monk has to make. First one, he has to remember that he is now an outcast from society. He has dissociated himself from society, and because he has no status in the sense that he has no money, has no position in the world, so most people in the world will also not want to associate with him. So he has become an outcast, which suits him ideally if he wants to practice and cultivate the holy life. Then number 2, my very life is dependent on others. This is a fact for a monk, which is quite frightening for a normal lay person. That's why it's not easy for a lay person to become a monk. Number 3, I must now conduct myself differently, etc. So the others I shall not bother to explain. It is more for monks to contemplate. Another sutta, number 50. Once the Exalted One was staying near Savatthi at Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's park. On that occasion, a number of monks, after returning from their alms round and eating their meal, as they sat assembled together in the service hall, remained in strife and uproar and dispute, abusing each other with the weapons of the tongue. Now the Exalted One, in the evening, rising from his seclusion, approached the service hall, and on reaching it sat down on a seat made ready. When he had sat down, the Exalted One addressed the monks, saying, "Monks, in what talk were you engaged as you sat here, and what was the topic of your talk left unfinished?" And they said, "Here, sir, after returning from our alms round and eating our meal, we sat assembled together in the service hall and remained in strife, uproar and dispute, abusing each other with the weapons of the tongue." And the Buddha said, "Monks, it is not seemly for you clansmen, who in faith went forth from the home to the homeless life, thus to abide in strife, uproar and dispute, abusing each other with the weapons of the tongue. Monks, there are these 10 conditions to be remembered, which, as they make for affection and respect, do conduce to fellow feeling, to not quarrelling, to concord and unity." What 10? Herein a monk is virtuous, restrained with the restraint of the Patimokkha, proficient in following the practice of right conduct, seeing ground for fear in the minutest faults, and takes upon and trains himself in the rules of morality, in so far as a monk is virtuous and so forth, and so trains himself. This is a condition to be remembered, which, as it makes for affection and respect, does conduce to fellow feeling, to not quarrelling, to concord and unity. Number 2, Then again, a monk has heard much. He bears in mind what he has heard. He hoards up what he has heard. Those teachings which are lovely in the beginning, middle and end, proclaim in spirit and in letter the all-fulfilled, utterly purified holy life. Such like are the teachings he has heard much, borne in mind, practiced in speech, pondered in the heart, and rightly penetrated by view. In so far as he has heard much, etc., this is a condition to be remembered, which conduces to concord and unity. Number 3. Again, a monk has a good friend, a good companion, a good intimate. In so far as he is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 4. Again, a monk is easy to speak to, possessed of qualities which make him easy to speak to. He is tractable, capable of being instructed. In so far as he is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 5. In all the undertakings of his fellows in the holy life, be they matters weighty or trivial, he is shrewd and energetic, having ability to give proper consideration. Therefore, as to what is the right thing to do and how to manage it, in so far as a monk is such, this is a condition to be remembered, which conduces to unity and concord. Number 6. Again, a monk delights in Dhamma, is pleasant to converse with, rejoices exceedingly in higher Dhamma, in higher Vinaya. In so far as a monk is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 7. Again, a monk dwells resolute in energy for the abandoning of bad qualities, stout and strong to acquire good qualities. In so far as a monk is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 8. Then again, a monk is content with whatsoever supply of robes, arms, food, bed and lodging, comforts and necessaries in sickness he may get. In so far as a monk is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 9. Again, a monk is collected, possessed of mindful discrimination in the highest degree, able to call to mind and remember a thing done and said long ago. In so far as a monk is such, this is a condition to be remembered. Number 10. Lastly, a monk is possessed of wisdom. He has wisdom for tracing out the arising and ceasing of things, wisdom which is Aryan, penetrating, going on to the utter destruction of ill. In so far as a monk has such wisdom, this also is a condition to be remembered, which, as it makes for affection and respect, thus conduce to fellow feeling, to not quarrelling, to concord and unity. These monks are the 10 conditions to be remembered, which conduce to concord and unity. That's the end of the sutta. So this is another sutta more for monks, and also another very practical sutta where a monk is encouraged to cultivate these 10 qualities. Because they conduce to concord and unity, harmony in the Sangha. The first one, the monk should be virtuous. He should be restrained by the restraint of the Patimokkha. Patimokkha is the code of precepts, contains 227 precepts of a Theravada monk. So a monk is supposed to abide by these precepts as much as he can. Number 2, a monk should have much knowledge of the Dhamma, and he should understand the Dhamma, meaning the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha. He should ponder in his mind and understand these suttas. And this and the second thing that conduces to harmony and unity of the Sangha. Number 3, the monk should have a good friend. Here, a good friend is a Kalyana Mitta. In Mahayana books, they translate it as a good knowing advisor. He's supposed to be a teacher, a fellow monk who can guide a monk in the Dhamma Vinaya, in the holy life. Number 4, the monk should be easy to speak to, not stubborn. In other words, he should be willing to listen to instructions. to listen to advice and carry them out. That means he is willing to listen. Number 5, he should share in all the duties and work of the Sangha in the monastery, and do his best to carry out all the duties, whether it's a heavy duty or a light duty, as well as he can. This also conduces to harmony and unity of the Sangha. Number 6, a monk should delight in Dhamma, in the higher Dhamma and the higher Vinaya. The higher Dhamma, Abhidhamma, here refers to the higher teachings in the Dhamma, not the later 7 books, because the later set of 7 books of Abhidhamma definitely was written much later. So here in the suttas, normally when the Buddha talks about the higher Dhamma, he usually refers to those Dhammas that you cultivate to get out of samsara. Usually the Buddha mentions a set of 37 requisites of enlightenment. That's Pali is Bodhipakya Dhammas. And these 37 requisites of enlightenment is also is equivalent to the Noble Eightfold Path. And here normally when the Buddha talks about the higher Dhamma, he also talks about the higher Vinaya, the higher monastic discipline. There is no set of books called Abhivinaya. Just as during the Buddha's time, there was no set of teachings called the Abhidhamma. Then number 7, a monk should be resolute in energy, should make a lot of effort to practice the holy life, to abandon his bad qualities and to acquire good qualities. Bad qualities are like greed, hatred, delusion, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, doubt. These are the 5 hindrances. Jealousy, arrogance, etc. Number 8, the monk should be content with whatever supply of requisites that he receives, food, robes, bed and lodging, medicines, etc. Contentment comes from within. It is a quality, and not dependent so much on outside things. It's a quality of mind that has to be cultivated. And number 9, here is talking about sati. Sati here, recollection. The definition is given here as in some other suttas. Is able to call to mind and remember a thing done and said long ago. So sati is the quality of remembering, and when applied to the practice of the holy life, it means to remember what you have to practice. That means to remember your object of meditation, to remember that life is anicca, impermanent, life is dukkha, suffering, and life is anatta, there is no self, etc. So this sati is a quality of remembering whatever you want to practice. So number 10 is a quality of wisdom. Wisdom to be able to see the arising and ceasing of everything in the world. Everything that arises must cease. Because if you see the impermanent nature of the world, then you can become weary, disenchanted with everything in the world.